Hello, welcome to Creating Portland. I'm your host, Pearson Kunz, and on this podcast, I'll be interviewing progressive creators who are using their art to shape the culture of our city and beyond. I hope you enjoy this episode of Creating Portland. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Creating Portland. We have an incredible, across the spectrum creative artist collaborator here that I am so excited to talk to. We're here today with Fran Bittakis, and she is a Thai American who was born and raised in Chicago to immigrant parents and has lived in Portland since 2004. She opened up Seizure Palace, a screen printing shop, with her husband Nick in 2007, and then in 2019 she founded JOOP JOOP, which is a radical creative agency specializing in film, video, photos, events, casting, and consultation that uplifts underrepresented, multidisciplinary creatives. Her network in Portland reaches the film, TV, fashion, music, events, design, and culinary industries and aims to connect these creatives to each other. You sound like the perfect guest for our show. We're so excited to have you. Fran, welcome to Creating Portland.
Thank you. Thanks so much. This is really exciting. This is the second podcast I've ever been asked to do. So thank you so much for inviting me.
We are just honored to have you. Oh my goodness. Yes, I've been following you since about this summer when things were sort of blowing up on Instagram with the movement and everything, and I'm just fangirling at this point and so excited to chat with you in person. But let's get right into it. The question, the big sort of broad, vague question is, how are you, Fran, creating Portland? And it can be as vague as you want or as specific as you want, but it sounds like you got a lot going on. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I think, I've always known that I was a creative person since I was, young and didn't really know how to channel that, right? Was like, I love to draw. I want to be in a band. I love fashion. I just loved everything, but I never really had a mentor. I never had anybody that was like, follow me down this road. So the way that I learned how to kind of dabble in all the things, I think, if I'm right, the Gemini rising helps that part a little bit, but was to try a little bit of everything, and kind of just dip my toes in, see if that feels good. I also realized that I kind of get bored quickly. So I, love to keep moving. And I think one thing that I kind of forget sometimes that I've accomplished so much in such a short amount of time, especially just starting with Joop Joop, but that I'm on to the next thing already, or I'm juggling 8 projects at one time. So that's kind of how I work. But, being a creative person in Portland and creating a creative space in Portland is just really special. I think especially in the last 5 or 6 years, connecting with more BIPOC creatives in Portland, and all of a sudden realizing, because I was dipping my toes in all these spaces, that I could start connecting people together. And that was really cool and really interesting. Someone's like, oh, I'm looking for this kind of a makeup artist. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that person, or whatever the case may be. And so by doing that over such a long period of time, getting to the point where I started Joop Joop, then it was like, oh wait, I can put all these people together in my own projects. Okay, that sounds cool. And so yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I just I really do just get inspired by all the amazing creatives that I know, and they all are multidisciplinary. They all do so many things, and I don't know if that's a symptom of what and how I kind of was brought up, where nobody really was showing me the way, so I was trying everything, or if kind of with the younger generation, it's everybody has access to so much more technology and tools, so people can be more than just one thing. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm not really sure what the answer is, but yeah.
That is sort of the exciting thing, to watch all these people do so many things and be involved in so many things and have, you're right, it's totally about access now, which feels so different than previous generations where they really had to specialize to get to a certain level in their field. And then totally. You talk about your personal projects. So bringing all these people together for your personal projects, what kind of things are you working on, or what is what does that side of Joop Joop look like?
Well, to be honest, because I didn't have like a formal education, like going to film school or going to design school, I actually went to culinary school and I thought I was smarter than everyone else because I was like, I'm gonna go to trade school. Wow. Like, I thought like you guys are all gonna be like getting your degrees in philosophy and like figure that one out for
Mm-hmm.
yourselves later. But anyway, I don't work in the culinary industry as a chef anymore, but um I think like when I started Joop Joop, it was because I wasn't able myself to find a space that I could work in or find a space where people would hire me because I
Mm.
didn't have that resume, right? Like I opened a screen printing shop. So like legit my resume looks like I owned a screen printing shop for 12 years. Thank you. That's it. So it's like
What
who
does
who's
this
gonna hire
translate?
me
Yeah.
for yeah. So when I started trying to find jobs in different creative spaces, whether it was at film and TV or whether it was at a creative agency, I really was struggling. And it's also like I'm also not like exactly a spring chicken either. So that's the other thing. Like I'm 42 years old now, and I just haven't had the 20 years under my belt like a
Mm.
lot of my friends do that went to film school straight out of high school or whatever that looks like. So after kind of a couple of years of trying to navigate that space and figure that out, I had so many rad creative friends that were working on their own projects, like making music videos or making shorts, and like, hey, like, can I help out? Or like, so sometimes it would just be me showing up and doing crafty,
Right.
or me just showing up and being a production assistant, or just helping out in any way that I could. And then I was like, oh, I really like this. And then, in 2019, I had spent like a couple years before that sort of beginning to wean myself out of working at Seizure Palace because that also was like a mom and pop business, right? In the sense that I was running it with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And screen printing is like his passion. And I was happy to be there to like be the, business person and be the office manager and all those kinds of things. But I realized like, I really want to lean into my creativity and how do I figure out how to do that? And so after getting kind of rejected quite a bit, there's nothing like being rejected a bunch of times for you to kind of like catch fire a little bit. Like that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of how I am. I'm like, oh, you want to tell me no? I'm
No,
coming
I'm
in hot,
definitely gonna do it. Yes.
Yeah. So I started Joop Joop, and Joop Joop actually just means kiss kiss in Thai. And I
Oh.
thought it was like a really cute way for another Thai person to immediately identify that I was a Thai person. And it's kind of fun to say
Mm.
too. Um, but yeah, so I started Joop Joop, and right off the bat was approached by my friend Pam, who owns Francis May. So it's like really lovely boutique clothing store downtown Portland. And funny enough, herself and a bunch of other small business owners in Portland, we all kind of started our businesses at the same time. So I'm talking about Seizure Palace. So back in like 2007,
Mm.
2008, there was like this whole group of us that were like in our like mid to late 20s that were all just opening up our own thing, tattoo shops, clothing stores, like screen printing shop, like whatever. And so we had known each other for a long time. And she hired me to do a photo shoot for Frances
Ooh.
May. And so that was like my first paid job. And so I pulled the whole entire cast and crew together. And I believe 10 out of 14 people on the crew identify as BIPOC. And that was something that I had never really seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just like hired all my friends to help, pull the photo shoot together. And it was a really amazing experience. So yeah, just, trying to just not being able to find space that I could fit into. I like also feel like I don't really fit into a lot of boxes very neatly
Mm.
either, which I think that a lot of people identify that way, but it's it's hard because even if I would go to a creative agency and have an interview or want to get a job, I would just start, being myself. And I didn't know like how you're supposed to speak and how you're supposed to move in those spaces. So I'm just like me, blah, 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 like, just talking. And then I'm like, oh, I think people are really excited about who I am and what I do, but I think nobody knows what to do with me.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and I
that's
think
kind of why I started Joop Joop.
yes, which is so exciting. And I think the goal then, of course, is to have a space where you can just be you in all of your quirks and all of your awesomeness in those other spaces. But I love this spirit of yours to just start your own thing, make it what it is, use this kind of language to identify other creators. that you want to work with. And then so, okay, and you kind of got into it here, but I think creative agency feels very vague. Can you talk about kind of what that means for you and maybe even like broader? I just think it's such an exciting possibility. Like so much possibility is in there when I hear it. But what does it mean for you?
Yeah, I actually struggled with the name, or not the name, but like what I was going to call what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
At first, it was like, maybe it's a creative studio because that felt smaller and felt more intimate. But then I was like, I don't know, if I'm going to do this, I might as well go big, right?
Yes.
So then I kind of toyed around with calling it creative agency. I didn't really like the word agency so much, just in the sense of like what I had experienced,
Mm-hmm.
trying to be in those spaces. But I just figured, you know what, like, I guess in some ways, you have to just start to kind of use some of the language that already exists so people can very easily kind of identify and figure out what it is that I do. But hilariously enough, I felt like for the first year I was doing Joop Joop that I was kind of having a little bit of an identity crisis because I could do so many things. And
Mm.
people are like, what do you do? I'm like, I don't know, music videos, photo shoots,
Mm-hmm.
commercials, short films, live events, what, like anything, everything, And they're like, okay, you know? And then people started saying, well, you're kind of the plug for like all the BIPOC creatives and all the marginalized creatives in town. So like, why don't you become like a casting agency or something? And I thought, well, that
Mm.
sounds kind of cool too. Then I was like, I don't know. I'd rather be more creative and I didn't want to get bogged down with like contracts and people's schedules and that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing, And then people had said like, what about talent management? Same kind of a thing. I just was like, not really, I didn't want to get bogged down in the business side of things, even though I know that with any creative endeavor, having that business knowledge is obviously very helpful. And I think a lot of creative people maybe don't always have that side of
Mm-hmm.
things, like don't really know how to manage money and contracts and having those conversations. And because I had owned Seizure Palace for 12 years with my husband, it's still open. But I had practice, and I could kind of do some of those things. So I kind of just tried to say, well, I do want to kind of focus on being a creative person. And so, yeah, I don't know. It is like the word creative agency out in the world has a certain context and it's kind of loaded for folks who have been a part of that industry. They kind of know what it means and they kind of know what
Mm.
it's involved. And it doesn't always sound as cool as it is, Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like long hours, being worked to the bone, it's all those things. It's like a lot of the environments that those agencies create are not exactly the kind of environments that I would feel safe or want to work in. So in one ways, I'm kind of just using that word creative agency or that title of the business to kind of just like have it be really easily identifiable to
Mm-hmm.
people. But really, it's so much more. And so I don't know. One day, I feel like I'll be able to figure out like maybe what the correct combination of words are that will really kind of embody what it is that I'm doing. But it's still kind of an ongoing process, and it'll eventually, I'll figure it out. But it's like, back in the 50s, nobody knew what LGBTQ
Right.
was,
And now they
and
do.
now it's like a household, people
Right.
say it like in their homes every day. And now we have LGBTQIA2 Spirit Plus, So
Yes.
language is always changing, it's always evolving. And I think that eventually I'll really be able to kind of nail what it is. But what I did do is add the word radical in front of it, and that kind
Mm-hmm.
of helped me solidify really what it was in a nice little package.
Yeah, kind of like reclaiming this sort of toxic space of agency and making it your own and making it radical, which is so exciting. And that's so much of what I'm hearing in your philosophy is this idea of removing limitations. And you're coming up against all of these limitations as you're trying to work within the system. And then you're saying, let's just leave the system and make our own thing that has less limitations, that has more access, which is so exciting and exactly what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into it then on a broader scale beyond just Joop Joop, Portland as a whole. And it sounds like you've experienced the good, the bad, the progressive, the not so progressive. What about Portland art is really working right now? What is exciting and innovative and working? And then what about it do we need to work on? Do we need to improve on and fix?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Gosh, I would say, like, before I moved to Portland, I lived in Florida. I lived in Orlando, Florida, which
Okay.
is like, no, like, it is just like, I did not enjoy living there the whole time I lived there. But I will say, any kind of underground scenes, any kind of underground creative movements that were there, um, were I was a part of those,
Hmm.
like those little moments. And it's kind of like that thing where, like, when I was like 17 or 18 and I would like be standing downtown on a street corner and I would see someone across the street wearing like a Black Flag shirt, I'd be like, run across the street, hey, like, you like that band, I like that band, let's be friends. And
Yes.
hilariously enough, I actually have like kind of a handful of friends that I convinced to move to Portland eventually,
From
like
Orlando?
from when I went to like I went to high
Hmm.
school with them. So it was kind of like I moved here because I just saw, I don't know, it's like I came here and it's like I saw other people that looked like me or more like me, right? So like
Mm.
with maybe like their style or just like their creative vibe, people are like artists and musicians and creators and creatives, and I kind of just felt like I was a little bit more in tune with that part of it.
Mm.
What is kind of interesting and funny was that as I kept living here and the longer that I lived here, um I kind of, I mean, it's not like I didn't notice it right away, but I was like, oh wow, like Portland is really, really, really white.
Hmm.
And I realized kind of, over a span of 5 years, like right in the middle of like how long I've lived here, I was like, oh my gosh, like I actually don't really know or have a community of other BIPOC creatives like in the way that I used to when I lived in Orlando.
Mm.
Um, and so I don't know. I feel like what works is that, especially like in 2017 and 2018, just shortly after 45 had gotten elected,
Hmm.
we all really like needed to come together and like really think about what our communities could look like and how we could support each other. And I think that during those years, like 2017 to like 2018, 2019, I felt like there was this really, really like amazing, tight knit community of BIPOC and queer women, non binary creatives that were like just making it work, doing
Hmm.
photo shoots. There's like, House of Ada, House of Flora, the whole ballroom and Vogue scene was blowing up at that time. And I was really involved in that community and helping to produce events and like really just creating these amazing relationships. We used to do these really amazing underground parties and, just like so fun. We were just having a really good time. And I realized that, oh, I was able to kind of like use my privilege and provide a space for folks to be able to come together and
Mm.
really be themselves. And then it kind of made me think and want to fight for like the idea that like my friends couldn't be out on the street fully as themselves 110%
Mm.
without being hurt or harassed or whatever that looked like. So that really was kind of the seed and the plant of, really coming towards Joop Joop. And I think, after the summer and being out on the street every single night, it's really tough. And, I've been a community organizer and activist for, over 20 years too. That's like kind of the other side of like what I do. So
Hmm.
like not only is Joop Joop like a radical creative agency, but everything I do has like a social justice framework to it. So that's kind of the other piece, and that is just from experiencing life in that way and just really living it and breathing it for such a long time. Um, is that after the summer, like I'll admit, like I am burnt out.
Yeah.
Like I was going hard all summer long. And it's taken me, since mid September. Like I quit social media pretty much. I've kind of just kept it quiet. I think the last thing I posted was your podcast that you did with Betty was the last thing that I
Oh,
posted, but I've just been like quiet on that space because I
yeah.
realized that like, a lot of what I saw going on this summer was really amazing and really revolutionary and really powerful. But I also saw, I don't know, it's hard to say. It's kind of hard to talk about a little bit. It's like I just saw a lot of like, a grab for social clout, social climbing,
Mm.
using this moment that really should be not a moment, but something that we've all been considering and thinking about every day. Not, Black History Month shouldn't just be in February, right? Like we should be thinking about these things all year round, right? So I just kind of saw this a little bit of an ugly side to like
Mm-hmm.
what social media can do to a movement, but I also acknowledge that it can be used for good. And I've met so many amazing people through there. And like, to be honest, it's like you can choose and see what you look on, what you're looking at on Instagram. And I loved like at a moment when I first had, I think it's like been around for like 10 years, maybe a little bit more now. But I remember at one point it was like, oh my gosh, there's like these amazing, beautiful brown and black, like fat models on here. Like, oh my God. Like, I just was like, I just got to
Mm-hmm.
see all these things that I had never seen before. So I don't know. I think it can be good in some ways, but I think a little bit like, I think Portland is like this small town trying to flex like a big city
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like also, one of the biggest symptoms of capitalism is like rushing and like trying to get things done and just like not really being thoughtful and having intention. The idea of like slowing down,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's not something that any of us really know how to do. And so I think with COVID and the quarantine, it kind of put a heavy hand on trying to navigate what that looks like. And I went from being on the street every single night and going so hard to then not doing anything at all, like almost immediately. And that was like such a hard transition,
Mm-hmm.
to just like not know what to do with myself. And also like going out on the street every night, it kind of feels like a drug, it's like adrenaline every night,
Yeah.
and so I had to like wean myself off of that, and now 6 months later, 5 months later, I'm like, I don't know, I don't even know if I want to leave my house now. I've kind of come back
Mm-hmm.
completely like 360. Like I feel home, I feel cozy, I feel like it's safe in here, and like I don't know. So I feel like the good and the bad, I think that we'll all get to a place, I think, hopefully in 2022, maybe like, because I kind of feel 2021 is like a little bit canceled already,
Yeah,
kind of,
absolutely, I agree.
and it's like until everybody gets vaccinated, it's like we're still just in this really precarious spot. So I kind of
Yeah.
feel like I love the idea of 2021 being like the year slowdown, like the year break,
Mm-hmm.
just for everyone to kind of recalibrate a little bit, stick their hands in the dirt, grow your food, bake your bread, do whatever you're doing. But I really do love living in real life a little bit more than
Yeah.
on social media so much like I had been so many years before.
And what do you hope that in this pause time, in this sort of slowdown, how would you hope artists are using this? Or how do you hope Creative Portland is using this time?
I mean, honestly, I think it's just like if you have the privilege of resting,
Mm-hmm.
like just resting as much as possible, just trying to take care of yourself. I know it's hard. I think that there's like this thing where like I feel incredibly isolated, like so many people do. I'm such a people person and I live and thrive on community.
Yes.
And it's like I'm finding myself kind of battling, like, oh, I don't know. I don't really want to reach out to that person because they're probably going through so much and I don't want to bother them. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we're just a little bit cutting ourselves off from each other. But I do notice that when I make an effort and like try to just say hi or just send like one heart emoji to someone, it kind of re-engages the conversation. But I just think like I think right now, especially with what I'm doing, because right now it's like you know, I'm not really doing photo shoots. I'm not really doing
Yeah.
that work. And so I'm kind of using this time right now to take advantage of all the boards that I'm on and
Mm.
trying to figure out ways to like change the systems from within too, and kind of trying to like build a better foundation for maybe the younger creatives coming up behind me. And so everything that I'm doing now is a little bit on a slow burn kind of vibe. I mean, it is a lot of work and I do put in quite a few hours volunteering every single week. But I do feel like if everyone can just like, I mean, I don't think in any other time in our lives, like I don't know when we would be able to do this.
Right.
Like chill like
Especially
this.
as
Like I can go
creatives,
to
we feel like
bed
we have
at
to
4 in the
create.
morning
Mm-hmm.
I can go to bed at 4 in the morning and I can wake up kind of whenever I want. And it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to like go to bed when I feel like it and
Yeah.
wake up when I feel like it. Like that in
Yeah.
itself is like a complete luxury and privilege. So I just kind of hope that a lot of the creatives in this town, at least, like maybe, just right now, just focus on kind of like taking care of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and exploring what it's like to not constantly be creating. I think there's this mentality, and it's probably rooted in capitalism, like you're saying, of like you have to keep making more, 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 and nothing is ever enough. So to have this time to just not make things, which I mean is honestly something
Yeah.
I need to reflect on too. I made a damn podcast in the middle of a pandemic, but it's also like, yeah, we need to stop for a little bit and like have these reflection times. And I also love what you're saying too about attacking it from a policy level and attacking it from these sort of reflections that we have time to do. I think a lot of these policies we're just working within because we want to create things. So we're just letting them continue to exist in a way that is harmful and continue to exist in a way that doesn't actually serve us as artists. So now's a great time to pause and check those out, make sure they're actually serving us.
Yeah. And that work is not that exciting.
No.
But it's really important. And I kind of have really, at least in the last, year or so, really understood. Because, again, like I'm all about like smashing the system. Like if you ask me truthfully, like I'm kind of an abolitionist, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to
Yes.
work within any systems, but I don't know. It's a hard one. I think about that all the time, and I'm just like, do my own thing or try to change it from within the system. Do my own thing. It's like it's just this constant back and forth. But yeah, I think that right now is a really good time to kind of reflect on the systems that we're all working in, find out like where our privileges lie, and kind of see if we can make change, in those spaces. It's not easy, but yeah, it's definitely important. So yeah.
Ugh, yes, so inspiring to hear that, and such an important reflection as well. Okay, so our last question is just what is your hope for Portland art and Portland creation? What's the dream for maybe a post-pandemic world creatively?
This is an easy answer for me.
Oh, good.
Hmm. All right, this is what I want. I'm going to put it out there to
Yes.
you in the world.
Manifest it.
I really would love to see all the different agencies in town, Nike, Adidas, all these companies say, hey, we all want to walk into our DEI work, which is diversity, equity, inclusion work. It's a long process. We have to start somewhere. What I see is like a lot of the stuff that's happening is a little bit performative, but we all,
Mm-hmm.
again, have to start somewhere. What I would really love to see is the companies coming together, pulling a fund together, and let's just say this is what I would love for it to look like.
Okay.
So let's say like each of them, I don't know how much this would cost, each donate, $1 million, let's just say. Get me a warehouse, pay my salary, give me insurance,
Yes.
let me have an incubator where I can like have all the gear that I need to make, let's say, 2 feature films, 10 short films, 20 music videos, 30 photo
Yes.
shoots, whatever
Yes.
that looks like over the next 5 to 10 years, with mentorship and support and access and networks and all the things that I need. And then that means that you all have actively been investing in this particular community. And then at the end of that 5 or 10 years, we will all be ready to work and get paid, right?
Yes.
From all these places. They want us so bad, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they like, but what are you doing to get there? Like, how are you providing for us? How are you like putting back into that community? So I feel like that is like kind of a very huge lofty goal, but I kind of feel like it kind of makes sense to me. Just like
Totally.
invest in the people that you want to hire eventually. Like, how do you think any of us are going to learn how to be videographers or
Mm-hmm.
editors or creative directors or art directors or stylists or any of these hundreds of jobs, like without
Doing it.
letting us figure out how that looks like, what
Yeah.
that looks like for us. So I really feel like, yeah, being able to have those companies invest in a creative incubator for
Mm-hmm.
me is like kind of a dream.
Oh, I just got chills. I'm like, yes, I need that tomorrow. I need that space. That would be just a dream come true. And I
Can
like
you even
to,
imagine?
I am imagining and I'm loving it. I like too how you bring up like this tying between this commercial creative and then this more artistic creative of like feature films, short films, music, and like how those worlds need to coexist and sort of the future of that being together, like fostering creative arts in these film industries and things so that they can support your more capitalistic creative agencies as well and like tie it all in. uh you are
Yeah.
speaking right to my soul, Fran. Well, thank you
Oh,
so
thanks.
much for being here. This was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank
Where
you so
can
much for having me.
absolutely, and where can people find you online?
Online, you can find me at my website, which is joopjoopcreative.com. So that's spelled JOOP creative.com. And I do have Instagram, and that is at joopjoop.creative. I'm not active on it at the moment, but I do go on there just like once every week or two just to see if anybody has slid into my DMs, as you young folks like
Nice.
to say. um, but yeah, that's it pretty much.
Okay, cool. And we'll make sure to link both of those in the episode description. Thanks again for being here, Fran.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Creating Portland with me, Pearson Kunz. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Creating PDX, or on our website, creatingpdx.com. This podcast was brought to you by Wolf and Thunder Productions and Golden Pride Productions. See you next time. Bye!